Good morning, it's Sasha here from Ndevr, and I'm very excited to see you all here today. You'd have thought I was giving away the winning lotto numbers. This is how quickly everyone signed up. Sorry, but this is the next best thing. This is AP automation. Joining me today, we've got Joost Engel, the Managing Director and VP of Sales for Forza Consulting in the Netherlands, and Richard van der Bosvoort, the CEO. Please go easy on them this morning. It's only just turned 6 o'clock in the morning. They've had to get up incredibly early to do this for us. Now, as you all know, AP automation is a bit of a no-brainer for a busy AP department. It delivers rapid ROI and makes life easier for everybody by eliminating the routine tasks while vastly improving accuracy. And today we want to show you a product that we believe outperforms all of the competing AP automation products that a JD Edwards user might come across. This is ScanMan. It is 100% in JD Edwards, just like any other JDE module. There's no custom code, no integrations, and there is an embedded OCR, so no additional OCR investment needed. It's validated by Oracle and delivers the best ROI of any of the AP automation products we've investigated for you. Now, Forza are a JDE consulting company from the Netherlands, and they are the developers of this wonderful product, which has been built using native JDE technology and product code so that it seamlessly connects to your Enterprise One processes. But it's going to be much better for you all if I let Joost and Richard tell you all about it and show you how it works. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand the controls over to Joost.
Thank you, Sasha. Richard and I are very enthused to host this webinar with Ndevr today. We're equally enthused to have the audience attend and explore the only end-to-end finance suite embedded in JD Edwards Enterprise One. So let's get started. Many organizations struggle with efficiently processing invoices, which is costly for your company and can be frustrating for your suppliers. Manual paper-based AP processes typically result in data entry errors, stalled approvals, delayed payments, and missing payment discounts. Not to mention that these outdated processes are cumbersome, error-sensitive, and lack the visibility and auditability you need today. Today's finance departments require solutions that help increase efficiency and accuracy, enhance process visibility, and improve auditability. There's a wide selection of third-party tools on the market today, which typically come with an expensive price point and are paired with long implementation projects, complex IT architectures, and high maintenance costs, all of which makes obtaining rapid ROI challenging. Unlike any other finance automation suite, ScanMan is completely native to JD Edwards. It's been completely developed within the JD Edwards toolset, and it's best considered as an additional E1 module. It's an out-of-the-box solution that is seamlessly integrated to any and all other JD Edwards modules without any integrations or synchronization of data. With ScanMan, your AP staff, project managers, contract administrators, accounts payable staff, approvers, treasury, and any other employees or departments all work within one single application and one single database, Enterprise One. ScanMan modernizes, automates, and optimizes your Enterprise One processes by seamlessly integrating procurement, accounts payable, and accounts receivable. ScanMan solutions don't just look like JD Edwards, they are JD Edwards. All of which means that you're able to modernize the way you interact with vendors, banks, and auditors, all from within Enterprise One. Today's webinar will focus on accounts payable automation. However, for those of you looking to climb the automation stairway, it's good to note that our finance suite includes modules for automated payments with your banks, AR automation to automatically process your bank statements and bank reconciliation activities, and vendor portals, which can include providing invoice statuses to supplier reference, issuing POs to vendors, and any vendor onboarding workflow requirements you may have. Since our product launched in 2015, our solutions have been implemented globally. Our customer list includes clients in the United States, Canada, Australia, China, and across Europe. Today, tens of thousands of invoices, bank statements, and payments are managed using the ScanMan finance solutions. In this webinar, we're going to zoom in on accounts payable automation. We define AP automation as automated invoice document collection, intelligent data capture by OCR, electronic invoice approval workflows, automated 2- and 3-way matching, and exception handling processes. ScanMan Financial Solutions should be viewed as a part of your digital transformation, transforming your manual processes into electronic, streamlined, and integrated workflows. Our objective in implementing ScanMan is to increase efficiency and compliancy, reduce the costs associated with processing and paying vendor invoices, and of course, increasing the speed at which invoice volumes are managed. As compared to paper-based systems, our customers can attest to the fact that ScanMan clearly achieved these objectives, making for favorable ROIs. Let's have a high-level view of what ScanMan is comprised of. ScanMan is all native JD Edwards technology, making smart use of your investment in JD Edwards by leveraging standard components, such as the Business Services Server, the AIS Server, UX1 components, including E1 pages, Cafe 1 and watch lists, and of course the Voucher Match application. Although these are great building blocks provided by Oracle, there were many gaps to fill. Fortune Consulting has its own Oracle validated product code to develop software, which means that when you upgrade E1, your ScanMan product will not be impacted. So very different than a customization, because there will be no retrofitting involved whatsoever. In addition, ScanMan seamlessly connects to your E1 processes, in example your procurement process, as it's all JD Edwards. ScanMan also has direct access to your E1 master data, in example for allowing us to directly validate and look up data in the JD Edwards address book, supplier ledger, or any other relevant data without the need for any integrations or data synchronization. There's a single database, a single application, JD Edwards. So ScanMan is truly a single source of truth system. Finally, we ship ScanMan with a best-in-class OCR engine, capable of capturing any and all fields on an invoice. Compared to defining templates per supplier, which can be time-consuming and tedious and translate into higher costs, our template-free approach delivers the quickest implementation, highest recognition rates, and the lowest maintenance costs. ScanMan covers your entire invoice lifecycle, from the moment the invoice has been received up until it's obtained final approval. Once received, your invoice will be captured in JD Edwards and it will never leave your system again, ensuring for complete process visibility and a full audit trail. On the left side, we see the different ways of receiving your invoices. We have digital invoices or electronic invoices, emails with PDF invoice attachments, and your paper-based invoices. So how does it all work? Starting off with the e-invoices or digital invoice documents, such as your UBL, Unified Business Language, or XML formats. These formats provide the highest grade of automation possible. Invoices are automatically collected and the digital data is directly imported and processed in Enterprise One. Without needing any user action or validation, invoices are routed for approval or automatically matched. Second are the PDF invoices received by email. ScanMan automatically collects the PDF attachments and processes these through the OCR engine. The OCR engine is where we convert your invoices into electronic JD Edwards data. The JD Edwards entry fields are then pre-populated with the corresponding invoice data from the invoice. And once in JD Edwards, the invoice data and the image of the invoice will be available throughout the process. Finally, the paper-based invoices. These are scanned to a network directory or email address and are also automatically captured and processed by OCR. Invoice verification, coding, matching, approval workflows, and reporting is all done directly in Enterprise One. All invoice data is stored in a single JD Edwards repository, allowing you to leverage your E1 reporting solution to run reports, or alternatively, leverage our standard set. Since all activities are performed in JD Edwards, standard E1 security applies and an extensive audit trail is generated. ScanMan leverages one of the best or the best and most powerful OCR solution on the market today, called Abby. This OCR engine is capable of reading all fields available on the incoming invoices, ranging from invoice header information and detail line items. Fields can include words, amounts, dates, pictures, stamps, address lines, email addresses, web addresses. Virtually any and all fields on an invoice can be captured. We've added a unique touch to the OCR engine by developing an invoice reference library. This means there's a database which contains a variety of invoice reference fields, or known as keywords, found on your AP invoices. Rather than maintaining a template per supplier, where you have to train the OCR engine where to find specific information on an invoice, ScanMan automatically recognizes reference keywords, no matter what their location or orientation is on the invoice. Once the keyword has been identified, in this example invoice number, the solution knows there's a 90% probability to retrieve the actual invoice number from a position to the right of the keyword. If the invoice number isn't found to the right, the solution understands the next most probable location to retrieve the actual invoice number might be below, to the left, or even above the keyword. Included in the keyword database are multiple languages, multiple variety of keywords. However, it may occur that an invoice reference is not included out of the box. But don't worry. Invoice keywords can be directly added from within JD Adverts, ensuring that the invoice from this particular supplier is automatically processed the next time it's received. Also included in the OCR engine are many algorithms, built-in intelligence, ensuring that the system recognizes the data that it's looking for to pre-populate the correct information in JD Adverts. So even if it's searching for an invoice number, however it finds a date, the solution will score the value it captured, making sure it always captures the correct data. The final aspect of the OCR process is recognizing your supplier. Identifying your supplier is a vital part of processing your invoices. As ScanMan is built within JD Adverts, we can use multiple invoice tags to retrieve the supplier information directly from the supplier ledger or even from the address book. In Australia, we typically use the ABN number, which is a unique identifier mentioned on the invoice and stored in the JD Adverts database. Obviously, we can also use any other unique identifiers such as tax ID, supplier name, web addresses, email addresses, and bank account numbers. Let's zoom in on the user interface for a bit. Your AP staff will literally log into JD Adverts and open the ScanMan split screen application, leveraging Cafe One technology, which you can see on the screen at this moment. On the right-hand side of the screen, we display an image of the scanned invoice, which can be detached and displayed on a second monitor. On the left-hand side, we see all the data that's been captured from the invoice by OCR. We see an import value, which is the OCR value, and a process value, which is the value that's been cross-referenced directly to the JD Adverts database. We do cross-references on company ID, supplier number, and of course we check for duplicate invoice numbers in JD Adverts for the particular supplier. We also translate the date into the appropriate JD Adverts date format, and we've captured the currency for this supplier, not by using OCR, although we could have, but by reading the JD supplier ledger. All your AP staff has to do is visually verify that the OCR engine has captured the correct dates and amounts, and that the other data is correct as well. And when it is, they hit the button Save and Process Voucher, after which this particular invoice will flow through your system for processing, either to an approval workflow or to the voucher match application for matching purposes. If the AP team needs to override data at any stage, they can do so. They can also kick off workflows to override the predefined workflows in your system. As you will learn, ScanMan is as flexible as JD Adverts, and it's a very intuitive solution. Let's review the options regarding the approval workflow process. Approval workflows can be triggered on a multitude of levels, including object account, business unit, category code, supplier, or account ID. Approvals are supported directly within Enterprise One through email notifications and also through the mobile platform using the mobile approval app. We'll zoom in and review all these options. For JD Adverts users, we have an E1 page displaying the AP invoice process flow, with buttons that display a flag and counter using the watchlist functionality. In this case, the voucher approval button has a flag and a counter 2 below it, which indicates that there's 2 vouchers for this approver to approve. As soon as you click the voucher approval button, the Work with Voucher approval application will open. We can see here that there are 2 line items representing 2 invoices to approve. As soon as you select a line, an image of the invoice will appear to provide a visual verification. You can then either approve the invoice or you can reject it. And if you do reject it, we'll prompt for a mandatory rejection reason so that when this invoice goes into an exception handling process, the next in line knows why it's been rejected and what action to take. What else can we do? Well, we can put an invoice on hold, notifying your AP staff that this particular invoice is under review, or we can start a Q&A session with someone else in the organization. Let's say I wanted Richard's input on this approval. I can ask him a question and wait for his answer. In addition to the E1 watchlist functionality, such as the flag and counter below it, we also have email notifications, which means that we can send out an email notification to an approver that they have invoices they need to work on. Typically, this is done for users that are licensed in JD Edwards, but they don't log in every day, so they will not be alerted by the flag and the counter. For this type of user, email notifications is a more efficient way to alert approvers to review and take action on invoices requiring their attention. The email is an HTML-based template, which means that we typically design it with your company logo and any other information you want to include. At the bottom is a button, and when you click that button, you're either directed to the JD Edwards Work with Voucher approval application that we've just seen, or we can route you to the mobile approval app. The mobile app can run on iOS, Android, and/or any web browser. So how does it work? It's a matter of logging in, and when you do, you will see a work list of invoices that need approval. Once the user clicks on an invoice, they will have a quick drop-down menu where the green check mark is to approve and the red X is to reject. Once again, when you do reject, the app will prompt you for a rejection reason. There's also a blue eye, which will pop up any additional information. This will allow us to pull up an image of the actual invoice for visual verification. This is also where you can put the invoice on hold and/or start a Q&A session. The mobile app has exactly the same functionality as is available within JD Edwards Enterprise One, only on a mobile platform. It integrates with the AIS server, which means everything is done in real time. So as soon as you approve an invoice through the mobile app, it's immediately approved in JD Edwards as well. For invoice matching, the ScanMan solution plugs directly into the JD Edwards Voucher Match application. Standard VMA provides 7 matching scenarios delivered by Oracle. We've added a number of scenarios to better suit the daily matching requirements of our customers. We've added functionality such as the ability to work with landed cost, to match with additional order costs, to provide two-way matching, and to include an approval routing, since some of our customers have an approval routing after the match takes place. In addition, workflows can be used in case of any mismatches, routing exceptions based on PO requisitioner, purchaser, or approval hierarchy, and the originator. Very similar to the workflow approval, we've also built in Q&A functionality with the matching process, which will allow you to start a Q&A session with someone else in the organization. This feature increases efficiency and timelines when dealing with exceptions that require input prior to approval. We store all the information, including any Q&A data associated with the invoice, automatically in a comprehensive audit trail. Your auditors will be pleased. We've also built a VMA workbench, which is an exception handling workbench where all mismatches end up. It's not just gathering the mismatches. This application will directly identify as to why a mismatch occurred and on what line item it occurred. So it might say line item 63 occurred a mismatch due to a price or quantity difference. With that, I'm going to turn over the presentation rights to Richard for the live system demo. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joost. So I will continue with the demonstration. I will push through 2 invoices through ScanMan, one with a purchase order and with one without a purchase order. And I will use a user ID, which is called AP admin. And this is a user ID without any security. So this means that I have every single business process and every single configuration option to my disposal. Of course, if we use the solution in real life, then native data security will be applicable. So as soon as I sign in, we will end up on a so-called E1 page. And this E1 page does represent a business process flow that we support and facilitate. If we look on the left, we see the yellow or orange boxes, and those represent the way that invoices are being included into this business process. So, for example, as preparation for this demo, I did send 2 emails with a invoice attached to it. And as soon as that invoice has been received, it will end up here in the ScanMan workbench, which is the heart of our solution. We monitor 1 or more email boxes, and as said, every single invoice will end up in the ScanMan workbench. The same could apply for the so-called folder upload or folder monitor, meaning that we are going to monitor either a external folder or a cloud storage folder or even a document management solution. And as soon as if an invoice is put there, we will just include it in the process as well. Last but not least, we see a manual upload, and this is an option to include an invoice manually into the system if it did bypass any of the other methods. As soon as the invoice is included into the ScanMan workbench, then fully automatically the system will decide what the next workflow step will be. As said, I'm going to push through 2 invoices, one with a purchase order and one without. In the example of an invoice with a purchase order, it would flow in this visualization towards the upwards flow. And then we will fully automatically match an invoice without any user intervention. So this means that as soon as an invoice does match to the purchase order as well as the receipt, then this invoice will be just handled and will be eligible for payment. If not, we are going to support a exception handling process. If we look at the horizontal line, this is representing a business process flow for non-purchase order related invoices, and here we have many options. And those options are options like when would you like the voucher to be created? Is that at the beginning of the process, as soon as we have selected a GL account, or is it at the end of the process, as soon as all the approvals have been taken into account? Do we want to create a so-called preliminary voucher? Those questions need to be answered during the analysis phase, and we are going to create a specific business process flow for you. All those steps can also be combined. So let's have a look. In the ScanMan workbench, we have a long list of invoices, which we see in the middle here. On the right-hand side, we see a picture of the invoice, and on the left, we see the data that we have been extracting from the invoice itself. For this demo, as said, I have an invoice in the middle here, which I did email to a designated email box, and this invoice is now visible on my screen. How do I know where this invoice came from? It's on top here. So Richard, myself, did send an email with this invoice attached to it, with a subject Ndevr ScanMan webinar as a subject line. And this invoice is visible in my list here. On the right-hand side, we see a picture viewer or an image viewer, which, as Joost explained, can be detached, which is very convenient if we work with 2 monitors, so that we have more space on the monitor where we have to perform our activity on. In the middle, we see a work list, and this work list does contain all the invoices since we were using ScanMan, meaning that as soon as you log in, you will only see those invoices that are applicable for your job role that you need to perform. However, in this particular scenario, I'm an AP administrator, so I see every single invoice. But if this would be a real life scenario, then typically the first step is verification. Verification means checking if the OCR did his work correctly. And we then filter, of course, those invoices and show only those invoices that need to be verified. That's why we see this invoice on top right now. What we also see is that we have a long list of statuses. Those statuses are both user defined, so we can build statuses together with you, making sure that we can support your specific business processes, as well as statuses that are shipped with our solution. I will just show every single invoice again on this list, and I will emphasize on the invoice that I just emailed. On the left, what else do we see? We see data that we have been capturing from the invoice. And what we do here, we show you the recognized value and the process value. Bear in mind, those applications can be tailored to suit your needs, but as said, I see every single piece of information we have captured from the invoice itself. So let's emphasize on the invoice date. So first of all, we see here a recognized value, 12 February 2019. So that is something that the OCR engine has read from the invoice. Where is that coming from? So I will zoom in, and we see it here. Invoice date, a rectangle has been drawn around the keyword. Then automatically we find 12 February 2019. This information, as said, we see here. That's not the way that we are able to use it in our system. In our system, in JET, we need to create a numeric value out of the invoice date that we find on the invoice. The reason for showing you this particular example is that we do not only capture, we also enrich. So what we see here is that not only we are flipping a, for example, European date format into a US date format, as well as that the wording is being handled as well. Other relevant fields that we need to capture, invoice number. Same concept, rectangle drawn around the word invoice number, and then we see here the invoice number itself. So the invoice number is the same as that we are going to use. What we recognize is the same as that we are going to use. But this is giving us the option to show you that not only we do enrichments on the data that we find, we also apply every single standard GD Edwards business rule. So in this particular case, we see here that we generate a warning. So in this particular example, this supplier did send an invoice with the same number before. Typically, we would create an error out of this and push this one into an exception handling flow. Let's go back to the other two important fields on the invoice, like the supplier number. So we need to figure out the 5-digit supplier number automatically. So how can we do that? As explained by Joost, by every single unique characteristic that you might have in your address book. In this particular example, I've used the tax ID. So if I would look on the invoice, we see here the tax ID with a rectangle drawn around it. So that information alone was sufficient to fetch and to grab the supplier number. However, we could have used every single unique identifier, such as the Chamber of Commerce number, a bank account number, phone number, email address, address line, name of the supplier. Every single unique characteristic we can grab and use. Last but not least, we need to find the 5-digit company number, in this case 00260. And that has been found again by a unique characteristic on the invoice. So here we see a rectangle drawn around Forza Consulting, which we see here as well. So we use the legal entity name. But we could have used Mr. Joost Engel, the address line, the postal code, or even the Netherlands. Let's go back into a real-life scenario. So this invoice comes in. It has been emailed to a designated email box. It ends up in my list here. And now I'm going to perform my action on the AP department. So what I need to do is I need to select this particular invoice. Why do I need to select this invoice? Because I need to reserve it. I need to reserve this invoice because this list is a so-called multi-threaded work list. So several individuals can work at the same list at the same time. So I reserve that for myself. What we now see is that the fields that are editable become editable due to the fact that, as said, I have no security. So every single field I can change if required. If you see or you want to change something, of course, every single field is subject to, as said, the standard GDE business rules. So we see the magnifying glasses everywhere. We have found the header fields. Every single header field we can populate automatically as long as there is a clear reference on the invoice, such as remark, reference. Purchase order number, that scenario will be used after this non-purchase order related invoice. If we look at the amounts, we also, of course, need to grab those. And those amounts are visible in this section here, the invoice amounts. If we look at those boxes, we see 5 lines. So this does reflect the option that we can work with 5 different taxes per invoice. The tax rate area codes and the tax explanation codes are supported all over the GDE instance. So every single explanation code and rate code we can use. Automatically, the correct values will be populated. So what we also see here is that we embrace the same concept. So we see the OCR value as well as the process value, the value that we are going to use. Typically, we would hide such a column. However, this gives me the opportunity to show you that we keep a very tight audit trail. So if important fields, such as amount fields, are being changed, then we keep track on this. This is done for actually 2 reasons. Of course, an audit trail on amounts, that's pretty convenient, but also we manage and measure the performance of the OCR engine. As you might have noticed, I didn't change anything into this process. So what I will now do is just push it on towards the next workflow step. And as explained in the introduction, when we looked at the process flow, we have some options here. So we can ask someone in the organization to code this invoice for us. We can send a message to like a budget owner, head of a department, a manager to perform that action. We can do that ourselves here on the AP department, which in this particular example I will do. And we can create a preliminary voucher, which we typically call a locked voucher, and we can decide that this voucher needs to be created now or at the end of the process. So I will show you how that works. So the user needs to press the Save and Process Voucher button, and then the system will decide what the next workflow step will be. And as said, in this particular example on the AP department, we are going to code it, but as said as well, this could have been sent as easy to any other individual in the organization taking care of this. A picture is always available on the right-hand side on our screens. And what else do we see? We see here that we can code to one or more lines. Every single coding option we have in standard GDAT, but we also have here, of course. Subledger fields, cost objects, any and all fields are there. This particular scenario, what we have said is that we either use the information to which this invoice was coded or the supplier was coded before, or we use the default expense account, which we could associate with this supplier, and that's why we have populated automatically this account number. If we look on the line, we see here something which is called the approval route code, and by information we see here on the screen, the system has automatically selected a approval hierarchy in which Joost Engel is a first approver from $1 to $50, and from $50 and above it's me. This gives me the opportunity to show you the approval hierarchy via an email notification as well as an approval via my mobile app. How did we end up with this approval route code? By information we see here on the screen. For example, we could have used the company number, the supplier number, the business unit, the object account, or the whole account ID. And also we can create a hierarchy again here. So we could say every single invoice from the pizza factory ends up into the demo approval route code. However, if this would have been coded to department 261, it could go into a different workflow. So all those kind of options are available. Back to the role as AP person, I just have to press the OK button, and then the system will decide what the next workflow step will be. And in this particular example, the next workflow step will be look at the next invoice, verify it, up until the moment in time that your list is empty. However, we in the middle see here something that has changed. In this case, it's green, and I've said in this particular scenario, I've decided to create the voucher immediately after it has been coded, so that has been done. And also the status of the invoice is changed. So the voucher is processed, the workflow is started. We have a button here, View Voucher, which gives me direct access, and we'll move this slider to the side, to the Supplier Ledger Inquiry application, and we see here that this invoice has been created. This invoice has been created in just the same way as that you would have created a voucher manually. So every single field has been populated correctly. We see a paperclip here. This paperclip is a link to the original location where, or the original document as how we have received it from our supplier, either via email or the original document that we have scanned. The location where it is actually stored is something that you can configure yourself. So it's either a so-called media object inside GDAdwords, or it's on a cloud storage, network location, or as said in a document management solution. That's not the only way that we can present the invoice. We always have a button on the right-hand side where we can look at the picture of the invoice, and this is quite convenient because then if we scroll through, for example, the Supplier Ledger Inquiry, we don't have to press the paperclip every time. That's one a nice feature. The other feature is that wherever you are in GDAdwords, you can always call for a picture, as long as you have the unique key, document number, document type, and document company in your or on your form. So not only here, also during the payment process, the account ledger inquiry, so any and all forms. This invoice is still on hold. Although we have created the voucher, we are still not able to pay this invoice because it has to flow through an approval hierarchy. And this approval hierarchy is also on the right-hand side, visible. And here we see a form that we have used from the AP administrator's dashboard, from which we can fully oversee the whole approval process. So this means that I can see whenever I want to where this actual invoice resides. So in this case, it's on the desk of Joost Engel because he needs to approve this invoice from $1 to $50, and from $50 it's myself. Joost Engel did receive an email notification asking him to take action on this invoice. So I'll grab that email and show you how that actually works. The application itself, or the form that we see, can be tailored to your own needs. In the middle, we see here a button. As soon as we press the button, we will be guided into an application that has been built for one purpose and one purpose only. That's approving or rejecting invoices. So I have to log in as Joost Engel. And as soon as I log in, I end up in Ndevr, and I can approve the invoice or reject the invoice. On the right-hand side, as said, I can call for the picture. I can also look at the attachment here. I can add attachments for others in the process that might be of interest for them documents. Those documents will be stored at the same spot as where we also store the original invoice. In the section down here, we see that information that is relevant for you in this particular workflow step to approve and to look at. In this case, it's to which account or which accounts did we code this invoice. Next to the fact that we can just approve or reject the invoice, we can put the invoice on hold. Why is that? Because sometimes we need to inform our AP staff that there is a reason why we didn't approve or reject it yet, because we are waiting for something. And then we typically make it mandatory to give a on hold reason. We can ask a question to anyone in the organization related to this invoice. The nice thing about both the question and the answers, they are added to the audit trail. So if you would look at the audit trail, which we see here, we would also see that information, the Q&As, being added to this list. So back to the approval. If Joost would reject the invoice, then we typically make it mandatory to give a rejection reason. Why is that? Because there needs to be a follow-up action. This drop-down list of 3 can be as long or as short as desired, because this is fully user-definable, and also the follow-up workflows behind it. In this particular example, I'm going to approve the invoice. Typically, we don't make it mandatory to give a approval reason. And also here we see a drop-down list. This is also something that we can tailor to suit your needs. There's one worth mentioning, approve with forward referral. In some scenarios, we might need to include a third individual before we would like to approve this invoice. If so, I can do that immediately from here. So not only Joost Engel and myself need to approve this invoice, also a third individual. I keep it simple. I will just approve the invoice. I'm Joost, so I will say to Richard, hi Richard, this is fine. Joost will press the OK button as an approver. If Joost would have had more invoices in his queue, he would go back to a list where he sees all those invoices. He doesn't have any, so as soon as I press OK, this application will be closed. So I'll go back to the voucher. And here we see that Joost Engel did perform the first workflow step. With the comment I just made, and also the reason code I have added. What I will do now is approve this invoice via my mobile app. I will create a connection with my iPhone. Of course, also Android is supported. So I'll just move that on here. Make it small. Here it is. Okay. Let's go. So here we have the ScanMan app. In this particular scenario, I'm not logging in with a Ndevr user ID, obviously. I'm going to log in with my email address and with a password, and via a secure cloud authentication server or service. It's going to let me log in immediately into Ndevr using AIS. So as soon as I press the login button, I will be inside Ndevr. This is visualized in this particular scenario by the fact that I need to select an environment. In real life, of course, this will not be the case. So as soon as I log in, I will end up with my list of invoices. I have a rather long list. If the invoice number is red, then this means that this invoice is overdue. It's really easy to figure out where my invoice is in this long list because we can filter. For example, I could have searched for the supplier, but in this case, I'm looking for the invoice number, and here it is. I can look and select the invoice, press the picture button to check the image or the document. I can press the OK button and then approve it. If required, I can look at additional details. The functionality behind this is identical to the functionality that we saw in the JDetwords application. I can put also an invoice on hold. Again, I can look at the image, I can ask a question, I can reject it. But here we go for the happy flow, so I will approve it. Bear in mind, I'm now Richard, so I will say, hi Joost. Okay, with an exclamation mark, maybe a reason. As said, this is typically not mandatory, but why not? Confirm, approve. And then I will go back to my list. In the meantime, what we will see, if I press find and enlarge it for you, is that immediately this invoice has been gone through the second approval step, meaning that we have added the audit trail with this particular comment, hi Joost, okay, with a different status. And also what we see here is that the pay status has now been flagged from on hold to approved. So this invoice is now eligible for payment. We have a pretty extensive audit trail. So not only the audit trail related to the approval hierarchy, also what we measure and manage, I will go back to the workbench, is on line level, lots and lots of components related to this particular invoice, as well as that we can see the different steps that this invoice has gone through, including the time that it took to perform a certain step, such as it took 32 minutes to get this workflow approved. The information related to the audit trail can and will be combined with information that you have in standard JDetwords. We support and we deliver business views. Those business views can be used to report on and slice and dice on the information you have in your system. This actually concludes the demo related to the non-purchase order related invoice. I will quickly push a purchase order related invoice through, and I will show you how easy it is to work your way through such an invoice. So here we see a second one, which is in verification status. And this is an invoice, it's the same one, but there are two differences. One difference is that this one has an order number on the right hand side. We see order number 5441, as well as a supplier rule. So those two elements will decide and give the system the opportunity to fully automatically match this invoice without any other intervention needed than verification. So let's see how that works. So first of all, I need to select that invoice. All fields become editable again. We see here the voucher match automation supplier rule. So this is going to let the system match this invoice with a specific tolerance. And if there are additional costs, such as freight charges or admin costs, it will also take that into account. It will do this for purchase order number 5441, which we found on the right-hand side. This doesn't represent the fact that we can only work with one purchase order number per invoice, because if we look down, we see that we also communicate and visualize a column section, meaning that we can work with several purchase order numbers. Every single element from that invoice is captured, such as the quantity, the unit price, the extended price. Even if required, we can work with item numbers and use, for example, the item cross-reference in your system. What else do we see? Controls. So if we go back here, what we are going to do is, as said, we make this system as easy as possible from a verification point of view, or even in this particular scenario, we could have skipped this verification as a process step. And why is that? Because we put in checks such as, does this purchase order number belong to this supplier? Does this purchase order number belong to the branch plant associated with this particular company number? Those kind of checks are in, but also we are almost 100% sure that the OCR did this work correctly. How do we do this? If you look on the invoice, we see here 166.13, which is the total of the amount section. If you look at the total of the lines that we have found, which is the total of 137, 8, and 19, that total is also 166.13. So this means that with almost 100% certainty, we can expect that the OCR engine did its work correctly. The only thing this user now needs to do is press the so-called Save and Process Voucher button, and the system will decide what the next workflow step will be, and that in this particular scenario is try to match this invoice fully automatically. Okay, let's perform that action. Before I do that, of course, in JET every order number is a unique one. What I will do, I will just make sure that I have a number that is valid. In this case, it's number 5605. This is also showing me and you actually that we are really using every single piece of information inside JET. So I will just associate it with a different purchase order and we'll press Save and Process Voucher. By doing this, we see something green and I have to be quick. I press the Find button here. And we see that this invoice is in a different status. And this status is actually voucher match automation in process. So the system will try to match this invoice based on the rules that we have set up until the moment in time that it either finds an exception, and that exception needs to be handled, which is also a part of our solution, including workflows. And also what we can do is build in a threshold, such as we would like to try and test or match this invoice for 2 days. If we are not able to do that, then we push it into an exception handling flow. Why is that? For example, to manage the scenarios where an invoice comes in before the goods have been received correctly. Everything we do here is real time. So as soon as you press the Find button, then what we will see is a green checkbox again, meaning that the voucher was matched. And we can also show that. So if I go to View Voucher, we will have a look. It's just an ordinary voucher as that we would have created manually. That's what we see here with the 3 lines. Paperclip at the front, which again is going to push me back to the original spot where we have stored this document. On the right hand side, as said, a picture of the invoice is always 1 mouse click away. In this particular example, we have put this invoice immediately into pay status A, approved for payment. We could have configured based on, for example, amount thresholds or a specific supplier or a specific scenario that still this invoice needs to flow through a approval status if required. We could also have set a semi-automated version, meaning that although the system did find for this particular invoice and this particular supplier a match, we could still create a workflow step, meaning saying that this is just a suggestion and that the suggestion needs to be approved. We can also combine that with an option where we say, okay, every single invoice from a certain supplier is eligible for an automated match, with the exception of invoices above a amount threshold such as $1,000. This actually concludes my end of the demo. I will give the floor back to Sasha and Joost. Thank you for your attention.
Okay. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. The floor is open for any questions. There have been a couple that we've been sent already, so I'll start with those. And if you've got any other questions, just shoot them through on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So, first of all, can ScanMan handle both 3-way purchase order matching and 2-way purchase order matching? And if so, can it separate the approval workflows to be set for each?
Yes, yes, it can. Yeah, and also we can work with, for example, three-way matches without quantities, so we can fully match every single scenario. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, also, if there is no purchase order number on the invoice, is ScanMan able to match the invoice to the open receipts by something like, say, an amount?
Yes, yeah, also possible. And also, if there are any other like characteristics on the invoice, like a object account or business unit number or something that you have in the order, yeah. And that's actually the concept of creating a specific rule to work with the scenarios of our customers. Yeah.
Okay. With regards to the version of JD Edwards, is there any particular version that you need to be on?
Yeah, we are mainly depending on the tools release. So as of 9.1.5, we support ScanMan. If we look at the voucher match automation, that's as of functional release 9.1 update 1.
Okay. All right. And how many Australian customers are using ScanMan? I think I can answer that one. So at the moment, Cabrini Hospital in Melbourne and Viva Energy are using ScanMan. So Ndevr is the local partner for ScanMan. We've only just finalised that agreement, I believe, and we will be your go-to people for this incredible product. Another question: what is the name of the OCR engine being used?
It's Abby, ABBYY.
Okay, and can you match based on a delivery ID?
Yes, we can, but that means again a specific rule that we need to create, and also it's depending on the way that the current system is configured.
Okay, and this might be the last question to come through. Is it possible to approve or reject via email, not via the mobile app or via the JDE interface?
Yeah, so if we look at in the application or the example, we saw the button, so that's also possible. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, another question has just come through, and there's a couple more being typed as we speak. Can an employee have more than one role?
Yeah, if that's allowed in JD Edwards, then that's also possible in ScanMan. Yeah.
Okay. Do you need to implement VMA also in order to use ScanMan, or is that part of it?
No, you don't. You can also use different matching mechanisms, and even from the work list, we can go into the manual match if required.
Okay. Do you have a purchase order approval app? Let me go back to the application screens. That might help. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, there's another
so it
question.
Depends on what we need to approve in the purchase order. So if it's like from an exception point of view, so this is really focused on the invoice itself. So if there is like a mismatch with the purchase order, we use it. We can manage it via the mobile app. If we need to generate purchase orders or approve purchase orders via the mobile app, that's not possible because this is really related to invoices specifically.
Okay, there's another question being typed at the moment. At what levels can the voucher approval be defined? For example, some suppliers only, or specific branches, etc.
Both, and also combine. Yeah.
Okay. Now, folks, it is 5 o'clock, or beer o'clock. If you've got your pens ready, I'll just give you the winning lotto numbers. Thank you all for tuning in. No, just kidding. But thank you all for tuning in. There is another question being typed now, so we'll just take one more question. And if there's any other questions that pop into your mind at any point over the next few days, just email myself or email Andrew Janke or Tom Devine. Their emails are on screen at the moment. And the last question says, can someone validate and match purchase orders?
Yes. Yeah, that's also part of the audit trail.
Okay. Is there any last questions that anyone wants to ask? There's a little hand in the corner if you need to. No? All right. With that, I'd like to say thank you very much, Richard, and thank you very much, Just, for getting up incredibly early in the morning. I think there is one last question coming through. What is it? Is it 7 o'clock there yet?
Yeah.
7 a.m.
One last question. The last question we will discuss offline. And ask how much does it cost?
Okay.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a great question. All right. With that, everybody, I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll get the recording out to you as soon as we possibly can. Thank you all very much for joining us.